Good evening. I am Jhon Edward G. Seballos, Secondary School Teacher 3, a graduate of Master of Arts in Education, major in Mathematics at Mindoro State University. Tonight, I will be presenting to you my study entitled Predictors of the Readiness on Taking Competencies in General Mathematics of Grade 10 Students in San Roque National High School, Basis for Proposed Intervention Plan. Mathematics is one subject that pervades life at any age and in any circumstance. Thus, its value goes beyond the classroom and the school. Mathematics as a school subject, therefore, must be learned comprehensively and with much depth. More so, there is a need to highlight the competence of students in subjects that prepares them for the world, including mathematics. However, grade 11 senior high school students of San Roque National High School obtained a low academic performance for the first semester in general mathematics. It was revealed in the mean percentage score after the first and second quarter, school year 2022-2023, with the scores of 74.48 and 75.85 respectively. Despite being close to 75%, it could be seen that the gained knowledge and the skills of these learners were not much enough to conclude that they were prepared on taking competencies in general mathematics. In this study, the null hypothesis is failed to reject. It says that none of the factors predict the readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics of grade 10 students in San Roque National High School. In this conceptual framework of my study, it shows the relationship between the independent variables, which are the predictors of the readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics of grade 10 students in San Roque National High School in terms of cognitive factors, affective factors, teacher factors, and environmental factors, on the dependent variable, which is the level of readiness of grade 10 students on taking competencies in general mathematics as basis for proposed intervention plan. In this study, I used the descriptive correlational type of research, and it was conducted at San Roque National High School located at San Roque, Bulalakaw, Oriental, Mindoro. The respondents of this study were consisting of 93 grade 10 students of San Roque National High School, which were determined from the total population of 120 grade 10 student respondents with the aid of G-power analysis. Also, proportional stratified random sampling technique was used, which allowed the researcher to obtain a sample population that best represents the entire population being studied. I used self-made questionnaire as a means of gathering data and a summative test comprising of 50 questions with multiple choices to determine the level of readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics. Also, descriptive and inferential statistics were used, such as the frequency and percentage, weighted mean, and the multiple linear regression. Here are the following results and discussion of the extent of the manifestation of the following predictors of the readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics. First is the cognitive factor. It has a subfactor of knowledge and understanding. It has an overall mean of 3.09, which is interpreted as high extent. Next are the affective factors. First is the interest. It has an overall mean of 3.27, which is interpreted as high extent. Next is the study habits, which has an overall mean of 2.95 and interpreted as high extent as well. Next is the emotion and attitude, which has an overall mean of 3.60, which is interpreted as very high extent. The next predictors are the teacher factors. First is the personality traits. It has an overall mean of 3.61, which is interpreted as very high extent. Under instructional materials, it has an overall mean of 3.74 and it is interpreted as very high extent. Under the teaching skills, it has an overall mean of 3.64, which is interpreted as very high extent as well. The last predictors are the environmental factors. First is the school adjustment. It has an overall mean of 3.43, which is interpreted as high extent. The last is adjusting to classmates, which has an overall mean of 3.54 and interpreted as very high extent. Here is the summary of the extent of the manifestation of the mentioned predictors of the readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics. Generally, it has an overall mean of 3.43 and interpreted as high extent. On the other hand, the first in rank is the instructional materials, which has the highest overall mean of 3.74 and interpreted as very high extent. And the last in rank, which has the lowest overall mean of 2.95, is the study habits and interpreted as high extent. For the level of readiness of the grade 10 students on taking competencies in general mathematics, out of 93 respondents, 52 got a score of 1 to 15, which has a percentage of 55.91% and interpreted as not ready. 34 respondents got a score of 16 to 30, which has a percentage of 36.56 and interpreted as developing readiness. 7 respondents got a score of 31 to 45 and has a percentage of 7.53 and interpreted as ready. On the other hand, none of these respondents got a score of 46 to 50. Overall, it has a mean score of 1.52, which is interpreted as developing readiness. For the result of the significant relationship between the mentioned predictors and the level of readiness in general mathematics of the respondents, all the p-values of these predictors are higher than the significance level of 0.05. Therefore, none of these predictors are significant. Based from the computed results of this study, the following proposed intervention plan was made. Also, based on the foregoing findings, the following conclusions are drawn. First, the extent of the manifestation of predictors of the readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics is in a considerable degree. Second, students show developing readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics. Third, none of the mentioned predictors herein is significant on the readiness on taking competencies in general mathematics. And lastly, based from the following results and conclusions, these following recommendations are drawn. This ends my presentation for tonight. Once again, I am Jhon Edward G. Seballos, and thank you for being with me.